So coming to Yangon, over the last 12 months or so, the markets have been fairly quiet. Office tenants are staying in place as they awaited the results of the election that was held in November. In retail, some new developments opened, but most of the retail brands that are filling up these developments are local. A few foreign brands have entered the market. KFC now has 2 branches in Yangon. Pizza Hut just opened its first branch. Tony Roma's, the American barbecue restaurant, now has its first location in Yangon, and a few others. In the residential market, similar to the office market, prices have kind of come down. Demand has started to slow down. In hotels, service apartments, demand is quite okay, but prices have fallen as new supply has come online. Quite a bit of new supply finished last year. So I think very generally 2015 was pretty quiet in Yangon, and we expect for 2016, very broadly speaking, that the first half of the year will still be pretty quiet. The new parliament, which was elected in November, has taken its seat, but they have yet to appoint a new president, and that is expected by the end of March. And then in April is Thinjan. It's the Myanmar equivalent to Songkran, except instead of having a 3-day public holiday, it's more like a 2-week public holiday. So the whole country kind of shuts down. So it really won't be until May or June, I think, when activity starts to pick up again. And so we'll have to really start paying closer attention in the second half of the year. That's when we think things could really start picking up again. Well, JLL actually has a very long-standing presence in Myanmar. In fact, probably the most long-standing. We opened our first office there in 1996, and we're operating there on a number of projects, and we had to leave the market in 2002 because of sanctions imposed by the American government. As the market has reopened since 2011, while we have not re-established a permanent office there, a number of members from the team here in Bangkok and from our team in Singapore have been very active in Yangon, in Mandalay, and in a few of the other smaller markets. And we are serving a variety of tenants, local developers and investors, foreign developers, foreign retail brands, office occupiers. JLL has great relationships with many multinational corporate occupiers, a couple dozen of which are in Myanmar now and need our help. So we're there quite often on the ground serving our clients.
Okay, so you said that 2015 is a bit quite quiet, 2016 more or less similar to the year before. How about in the near future? Is it going to be booming for the business?
Well, many different economists think that the overall macroeconomy in Myanmar will grow quite quickly. I think sort of the long-term outlook for the next 3-4 years is 7 to 8% growth per year, which is from a low base. But as we've seen in other emerging markets over the last decade or two, looking at how Vietnam has changed, how Indonesia has changed, even how Cambodia has changed, with growth coming from a low base, we would expect that kind of growth to drive positive activity in pretty much all of the real estate sectors. In terms of attractiveness to foreign investors, if you look at the last, let's say, 3 years of investment activity, we've seen a lot of investment from Singapore, from Japan, from Korea, a little bit from Thailand, a little bit from China, some from Vietnam. So the interest in terms of source market is quite varied. In terms of the different sectors that the investors are looking at, there's been a lot of investment in hotels and service departments, a lot of investment in office buildings and in retail shopping centers. In terms of residential development, I would say that that's been more local. in nature. And in terms of where the market is today and where future foreign investment might take place over the next year or two, I think that the investors will have to look a lot more carefully at different opportunities, and instead of seeing Yangon as one big market to invest in, they will have to look at it almost like a more mature market like Bangkok, where you really have to pick the right location for the right kind of project and position it very carefully. I think the majority of the investment that we would see in the next year or two would actually be in factories and warehouses rather than commercial real estate in the city, as the Tilawa Special Economic Zone, which is just 20 kilometers south of Yangon, begins to open up this year. Correct, because over the last couple of years, the investment that has taken place, again, has been across all sectors because the market needed product in all sectors. But as things have evolved, there's no longer as much demand for new sort of, not restrictions, but barriers to having a successful project. So for example, for local Myanmar buyers, if you wanted to buy a condo, number one, there is no strata title law. So unlike Bangkok, where we have the Condominium Act, where you can go and buy a condominium and get a chonot, and you have legal ownership of that unit, there is nothing similar in Myanmar. So there's no legal guarantee that you will own forever what you buy. For most buyers, at most levels of income, there's no mortgage system like we have here in Thailand. You cannot go take a long-term loan for housing. The maximum loan term in Myanmar is 1 year, and interest rates are double digits. So you really have to pay all cash for a new residential property. You cannot borrow. Whereas in industrial, because of this GDP growth, there will be a lot more demand for consumer products. Manufacturers are looking to shift production lines from higher cost countries to Myanmar. I think Nissan, for example, just announced that they were going to start manufacturing automobiles in Myanmar. So they would be the first of the big Japanese automakers to go in. So it's companies like that that are coming in to serve the local market that I think we'll see a lot of investment from.
So it means that a lot of work has to be working on quite a lot then, especially for the resident business and also the factory business as well. Since Myanmar already done the election last year already, and then they're forming a new government, will you see any changes afterwards for the real estate business?
It's hard to say, because what I know from my contacts on the ground in the government there is that many of the laws, the regulations, land use plans, building codes, those sorts of things, the people that had been working on those over the last several years did not want to rush the process. They want to do it right. And so that's why very few of those regulations and new sets of laws were implemented before the election, because nobody wanted to throw away years of hard work. So I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll start to see some of this new legislation and regulation, if not come into force, at least become a lot more visible and maybe provide a little bit more transparency to the market that would support more investment and more activity.